I remember that night like it happened just yesterday. I was in my room crying into my pillow holding my fifth pregnancy test in one hand. Positive. Again. My hands trembled. My knees went weak. I dropped to the floor numb and broken. This was the fifth time. The fifth time I was carrying my pastor's child. And yet, the world still saw him as a holy man. A man of God. A man I had gone to for prayers and healing. I had trusted him with my pain, my past, and my future. But now my body was his battlefield and I was drowning in shame. I stared into the mirror that night and didn't recognize myself. How did I get here? How did a simple prayer request turn into 5 pregnancies, 5 children, and not a single soul to cry to? I was his spiritual daughter, his chosen one, as he called me. But tonight something in me broke. I wiped my tears and stood up, my hands trembling not with fear, but with something new. Rage. I'm going to fight back, I whispered. Even if it kills me. But before I tell you what I did that night, let me take you back to how it all began. Back to when I was just a quiet girl, looking for peace. It all started after my husband died. I was only 24, and life had already slapped me hard. My husband, James, had been everything to me. We were high school sweethearts. He was calm, kind, and hardworking. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And that was enough. Then one rainy night, while coming back from work, a trailer lost its brakes and crushed his car. James died on the spot. The world went dark after that. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even look at our wedding photos without feeling my chest tighten. People said I should be strong, but how do you stay strong when the only person who held you together is gone? I stopped going out. I locked myself in the house for days. Sometimes I didn't even bathe. My mother would come and knock, beg me to eat. My younger brother Kenny tried to cheer me up, but even his jokes couldn't reach me. I was drowning in sadness. Then one Sunday my mother dragged me to church. I didn't want to go, but she wouldn't stop begging. She said I needed spiritual healing. And the new pastor was powerful. Pastor Daniel is not like the others, she said. He hears from God. That was the first day I saw him. Pastor Daniel stood tall on the pulpit, his voice like thunder, his smile warm and inviting. He preached about broken hearts and healing, about restoration and divine peace. It was like he was talking directly to me. I cried through the whole service. After church I met him. My mother introduced me as the widow who had not smiled since her husband died. He took my hand and looked deep into my eyes. You're a special daughter of God, he said. The devil tried to steal your joy, but God will use me to bring it back. That was the beginning. He gave me his personal number and said I could call him for prayers anytime. I started attending weekly counseling sessions with him. First it was just Bible study and prayers. He would speak in tongues, pour anointing oil on my head, and tell me to fast for 3 days, then 7, then 21. I obeyed everything. I believed everything. One night, after a prayer session, he asked if I could stay behind for personal deliverance. He said he saw a dark spirit hovering over me, and it had to be cast out immediately. I was scared, but I trusted him. He was my pastor, my shepherd, the man sent by God. He asked me to kneel. Then he laid his hands on my head and started to pray in tongues. But this time his hands didn't stay on my head. They moved to my shoulders, then my waist. Then I froze. He told me it was part of the deliverance, that my body had to be spiritually cleansed. I wanted to scream, but my voice refused to come out. He whispered that I must never speak of it, that if I did, the demons would come back 7 times stronger. I went home that night and cried myself to sleep. The next week, he acted like nothing had happened. He smiled at me during service. He even called me out during altar call and prophesied that God was about to bless me with fruitfulness. I missed my period the following month. I didn't even want to believe it. But the test came back positive. When I told him, he hugged me tightly and said it was God's plan. But what about marriage? I asked him. He laughed gently and said, our covenant is not like the world's. We are bonded in the spirit. I didn't understand, but I nodded. The shame nearly killed me. I had to lie to my family. I told them I met someone new, but he was still praying for direction. I gave birth to my first child in silence. No naming ceremony. No celebration. Just silence. Then it happened again. And again. And again. 5 times. Each time he would call it divine favor. Each time I would die a little more inside. I had no friends left. My mother thought I was cursed. My brother stopped talking to me. I lived in a one-room apartment provided by the church. I was now a single mother of 5, all fathered by my so-called pastor. I wanted to disappear. But that night, with my 5th positive test in hand, something inside me snapped. I decided I would no longer be silent. I walked to the mirror and looked at my belly, then at my swollen eyes. "You've destroyed enough of me, Pastor," I said out loud. "This ends tonight." I packed my bag, carried my sleeping baby on my back, and took a deep breath. I had made up my mind to go to the police. I didn't care if nobody believed me. I didn't care if the church turned against me. I didn't care if the world called me a liar. But just as I stepped out of my door, I saw 3 men standing outside, dressed in black with their faces covered. One of them held a long stick. Another one had a bottle in his hand. "Where do you think you're going?" one of them asked, stepping closer. My heart stopped. They had found out. He had sent them. I froze at the doorway, clutching my baby tighter against my back. My breath caught in my throat. The 3 masked men blocked my path, their bodies like shadows in the night. I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. My legs wouldn't move. "Where do you think you're going?" the tallest one repeated, stepping closer with a heavy stick in his hand. "I was just going to get medicine for my baby," I stammered. He laughed. It was a cold, dry laugh that sent chills down my spine. "Don't lie. We know everything." My heart pounded like a drum inside my chest. How could they know? I hadn't told anyone. Not even my mother. The only thing I did was whisper my plans into the night air. One of them came closer and whispered into my ear. "If you try to destroy Pastor Daniel, you will disappear. Just like the others." Others? That word hit me hard. Did they do this to other women too? Before I could say a word, the man poured something sticky on my doorstep, kerosene. I could smell it immediately. Then he lit a match and dropped it just inches away. "Next time, this will be your body," he said. And with that, they turned and ran into the night. The flame fizzled out before it could reach anything. But the message was loud and clear. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking. My baby stirred on my back, and I gently rocked him to sleep, trying not to let my tears wake him. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the corner, knees to my chest, staring at the door, waiting for someone to break it down, waiting to die. But the morning came, and with it a new fire in my heart. I couldn't go to the police, not yet. It was clear he had people watching me, people willing to hurt me. But I needed to do something. I needed to get proof. Evidence. Something that would make the world see what he had done to me. And maybe to others. I remembered my friend Cynthia. We hadn't spoken in years, not since I got pregnant the first time. She was my best friend in secondary school, the loud, fearless one who never let anyone walk over her. She worked as a journalist now. Maybe she could help. I found her number in an old diary and called. "Hello." Her voice sounded just the same, strong and sure. "It's me, Sarah." Silence. "Then Sarah? After all these years? I need your help, Cynthia. Please." I told her everything. From the first prayer session to the 5th pregnancy. I didn't leave anything out. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You're not the first." I blinked. "What?" "You're not the only one, Sarah. I've been investigating this so-called pastor for almost a year. He's a predator. A serial one. You're just the first to talk." My hands trembled. Why didn't anyone say anything? Because he's protected. Money, power, threats. He scares his victims into silence. But now we have something stronger. You. Cynthia promised to come see me in secret. She told me not to tell anyone, not even my family. She was bringing a small hidden camera and a voice recorder. She said we needed to catch him in the act, get him to confess, or at least say something incriminating. I agreed, even though fear sat heavy in my chest like a stone. The next Sunday I went to church like everything was fine. I wore my best wrapper and held my baby with trembling hands. Pastor Daniel smiled at me from the altar. That same fake smile. After service, I waited behind as usual. I told him I needed personal prayers. He welcomed me into his office like always. There were oil bottles, candles, and a small bed in the corner. He closed the door. "What is it, my daughter?" he asked, placing a hand on my shoulder. I forced a smile. "Pastor, I want us to pray about my future. About us." His eyes lit up. "Yes, yes, the Lord has spoken to me. You are still highly favored." I let him speak. I let him touch. I let him feel like everything was normal. The recorder in my blouse was on. The tiny camera hidden inside the baby's bag was rolling. Then I asked, "Pastor, can you remind me again how God chose me? How this journey started?" He chuckled. Sarah, from the day you stepped into my church, I knew you were mine. Even God confirmed it to me in a vision." "But all the children," I said softly, "what if someone finds out?" He leaned in and whispered, "No one will believe you. I'm untouchable. You're lucky I chose you. Many women pray to be in your shoes." My heart shattered, but I smiled and nodded. After the session, I ran to Cynthia's car and handed her the devices. She looked at me with fire in her eyes. "This is enough. This will shake everything." But I should have known it wouldn't be that easy. The next day, my door was broken down by men in police uniforms. They dragged me outside, slapped me in front of my children, and threw me into their van. I screamed, begged them to tell me why. One of them spat on the ground and said, "You're under arrest for blackmail and defamation against a man of God." As they drove me away, my children crying behind me, I knew one thing for sure. Pastor Daniel was ready for war. And so was I. The police van smelled of sweat, metal, and injustice. I sat wedged between two officers, my wrists in tight handcuffs, my heart thumping like a war drum in my chest. Outside, people stared as we passed by. Some recognized me. Some whispered. Some pointed. But none of them knew the truth. All they saw was a poor single mother being dragged away for lying against a man of God. When we arrived at the station, I was pushed out roughly. My knees hit the floor. The officers laughed. "She thought she could bring down Pastor Daniel," one of them said, shaking his head. "Women and their drama." I was thrown into a small cell, damp and cold. The door slammed shut behind me. My world shrank to 4 dirty walls and a tiny window that barely let in light. Hours passed. Maybe days. I didn't know. They didn't let me speak to my children. I didn't even know where they were. My mind kept screaming, what if they took them? What if I never see them again? Then one morning I heard the lock turn. The door creaked open, and a man in a suit stepped in. "Sarah," he said calmly, "I'm your lawyer. Cynthia sent me." I broke down in tears. I hadn't cried since they dragged me away. But now everything came pouring out. The pain. The fear. The anger. "Are my children okay?" I asked. "They're with your mother now." Cynthia made sure of it. I closed my eyes and breathed. The lawyer, Mr. Howard, sat beside me and pulled out a file. "They're charging you with attempted blackmail, defamation of character, and spreading false information against a religious institution." "But we have the recording," I whispered. "We have everything." He nodded. "Yes. But they've already started pushing lies in the media. They say you're mentally unstable, that you've been harassing the pastor for years, that you tried to seduce him, and when he refused, you started spreading rumors." I felt like vomiting. "They're trying to bury you, Sarah. But we're not going to let them." That evening, I was finally allowed to make a statement. Mr. Howard stayed by my side, guiding me through every word. I told them the truth, again. I told them about the first prayer, the first touch, the first time he violated me. I told them about all 5 pregnancies, the secret deliveries, the silence, the fear. But the officer listening barely looked up. His pen scratched lazily on the paper. When I finished, he smiled coldly. Very emotional. "But it's still your word against his." "No," I said, my voice steady now. "It's my word, and a voice recording, and a camera, and maybe even more." He raised an eyebrow. Cynthia had been busy. While I was locked up, she had taken the audio and video to a private media house. She hadn't released it yet. She was waiting, planning. And then, just as the sun was setting, something happened. The cell door opened again. Another officer entered, holding a phone. He looked confused, almost nervous. "Let her go," he muttered. "Orders from above." They unlocked my handcuffs. "No explicación. No apology." Mr. Howard looked at me and nodded. "It's starting." Outside the station, Cynthia was waiting in her car. She looked furious, but relieved. "I was about to release everything online," she said. "But I decided to hold it back, until we're in court." "Why didn't they charge me properly?" I asked. "Because your story is out." Quietly. Whispers in the right ears. "Two more women reached out to me while you were inside." I looked at her in disbelief. "Two." She nodded. "They told me the same thing. Deliverance sessions. Oil. Touching. Threats. Pregnancy. Silence." I leaned against the car, shaking. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just a desperate woman making things up. He had done it before. And now others were finally speaking. I went home that night to find my children asleep on one bed, curled up like angels. My mother was waiting with tired eyes and questions she didn't know how to ask. "I don't understand all this," she whispered. "How could a man of God?" "He's not a man of God," I said. "He's a demon wearing a cassock." The next day, the story finally broke in the news. Famous Lagos pastor accused by multiple women of sexual abuse, spiritual manipulation. Pictures of me. Voice clips. Quotes. People were divided. Some believed me. Others called me a witch. A Jezebel. A liar. But I didn't care anymore. The world could scream what it wanted. I had started a war. And I was going to finish it. Then, something unexpected happened. Late that night my phone rang. I picked it up and heard a woman's voice trembling. I'm pregnant," she said. "By Pastor Daniel. He told me I was chosen. He told me not to tell anyone. But now, I saw your story." I sat down slowly. "How far along are you?" I asked. "For months," she whispered. "And I think I'm not the only one." As I listened to her cry, I realized the truth. This was bigger than me. This wasn't just my fight anymore. This was a plague that needed to be exposed completely. And suddenly a plan started forming in my mind. Not just to bring him down, but to expose every single person helping him. The war had just begun. And this time I wasn't alone. I couldn't sleep that night. The young woman's voice echoed in my head over and over. "I'm pregnant. I think I'm not the only one." It haunted me, but it also fueled me. I sat on my bed with a notebook and pen, writing everything I could remember about Pastor Daniel. Every prayer session, every private meeting, every suspicious thing he said, and the dates of each pregnancy. My hands shook, but I kept going. This wasn't just for me anymore. This was for all of us. By the next morning, Cynthia had already called. She had met two other women, both young, both terrified. One had attempted suicide after a forced abortion. The other had been sent away from the church and warned never to speak again. The number was growing. We decided to form a secret group, a support circle. Just us victims and Cynthia, meeting in quiet places, talking, recording, planning. We called ourselves the Daughters of Silence, because we had all been silenced, and now we were taking our voices back. Our mission was simple. Expose Pastor Daniel and everyone covering for him. I wish I could say everything went smoothly from that point on, but I would be lying. 2 days later, my eldest son Ethan, who was only 7, came home from school crying. Someone had told him that his mother was the church witch trying to destroy God's house. My stomach dropped. I rushed to the school the next morning and demanded answers. The principal looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Madam Sarah," she said, "but parents are concerned. Some are asking for your children to be removed from the school. They think it's bad for the other kids." I stared at her, speechless. "So what are you saying?" I asked. She sighed. "Please, we think it would be better if your children stay home until this whole matter settles." I walked out of that office with my head high, but inside, I was breaking again. I couldn't cry. I couldn't scream. I went home, held Ethan and the others, and told them we would be doing school from home for now. I smiled so they wouldn't feel the pain I was carrying. But every part of me wanted to scream into the sky. Pastor Daniel's power wasn't just in the church, it was everywhere. His hands reached into the schools, the police, even the community elders. I was up against a giant. But even giants can fall. That night, Cynthia showed me something that made my blood run cold. She had received an anonymous package. Inside was a flash drive and a small note that read, "He has been doing this for 15 years. Here is your proof." The flash drive contained hidden camera footage, dozens of recordings, all showing Pastor Daniel in his deliverance sessions. Different women. Same pattern. Same lies. Same evil. I covered my mouth as I watched the screen. My stomach turned. But it was also the final nail. "This is it," Cynthia said. "We have enough. But once this goes out, there's no going back. You could be in more danger than ever." I looked at her, my voice steady. "Let it out." The next morning, Cynthia's team released the footage. Not to just one news house. To all of them. By afternoon, the country was boiling. Breaking news. Secret recordings reveal Pastor Daniel's 15-year pattern of abuse. Women come forward against famous Lagos pastor. Church scandal rocks community. Police investigate allegations of rape, cover UPS, and threats. It was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, TV, radio, and then silence. Pastor Daniel didn't preach that Sunday. In fact, he didn't show up at all. The church released a short statement saying he was on a spiritual retreat. But we knew better. The man was hiding. And still people defended him. Some said we were Jezebels sent to destroy God's kingdom. Others said it was the devil attacking a great man of God. Even my own cousin sent me a voice note saying, "You'll be cursed for this. Your children will suffer." But many others, especially women, stood up. Victims began flooding Cynthia's inbox. Teachers, ushers, choir girls, even one of the pastor's former personal assistants. And then the biggest twist came. A male church staff member came forward. He told us he had worked closely with Pastor Daniel for years, and had secretly recorded several private meetings where hush money was discussed, where victims were threatened, where fake prophecies were planned in advance. He handed it all to Cynthia. And just like that, our case wasn't just about me. It became a criminal investigation. The Lagos State Police called for Pastor Daniel to turn himself in. The news said, if he does not show up in 48 hours, he will be declared wanted. But he didn't come. 48 hours passed. 72. Still no sign. Until the morning of the fourth day. I was bathing my baby when I heard a loud bang at the door. My heart skipped. Before I could open it, my mother rushed into the room, phone shaking in her hand. "Sarah, turn on the news. They found him." I grabbed the remote and turned to the nearest channel. There he was, Pastor Daniel, being dragged out of a luxury hotel in Abuja, covered in a blanket, hiding his face. Police officers held him tightly as crowds gathered, shouting, throwing bottles, screaming curses. Alleged sexual predator arrested. Over 20 victims and counting. Nigerian police confirmed full investigation into Church of the Light Ministries. My mouth went dry. It was happening. We were winning. But even as I celebrated, I didn't see the next danger coming. That night as I lay in bed, someone slipped a paper under my door. Picked it up. "You think it's over? You're next." And underneath those words was a picture of my children sleeping. I dropped the paper. My hands went cold. My knees buckled beneath me, and I grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. I stared at the photo again, my children, all 4 of them, sleeping peacefully in our one-room apartment, and someone had taken the picture from inside the house. Inside. That meant they had been here. In my home. While we slept. My babies. My world. They were in danger now, not just from threats, not just from gossip, but from people who had crossed a line no mother could ever forgive. I rushed to their mattress. They were still asleep, innocent, unaware. I checked the windows, the back door, the lock. Everything was untouched. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I ran to wake Mama. She came out of her room tying her wrapper, alarmed by my trembling voice. "Mama," I whispered, showing her the paper. "Someone was here last night. They took this while we were asleep." Mama's eyes widened. She took the photo, then hugged me tightly, whispering, "We need to leave this house. Tonight." We packed the children's things in silence. I didn't even think to tell Cynthia yet. I didn't want anyone tracing my phone. We went to stay with an old friend of Mama's, a quiet widow who lived in the outskirts of town, far from the main road, deep inside a sleepy village. I held my children close all night. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. By morning, my strength had returned. I called Cynthia. She screamed over the phone. "Why didn't you tell me last night? Sarah, they're hunting you now." "They were in my house," I said. "I didn't want to risk calling anyone until we were safe." Cynthia understood. "The pastor's arrest has rattled powerful people," she said. "He has friends in government, in media, even the police. Some of them are panicking, trying to protect themselves." "Are the other women safe?" I asked. "Yes. They've been moved. Quietly. But you're the one they see as the loudest voice. You're the one who started it all." I sighed deeply. "Then we make my voice even louder." Cynthia didn't stop. She sent the anonymous flash drive to international news outlets. We started getting calls from BBC, Al Jazeera, even CNN. They wanted to cover the story of the brave Nigerian mother who exposed a powerful predator hiding behind a pulpit. I felt exposed, yes, but also empowered. We arranged for a televised interview. I remember sitting in front of the cameras, my hands folded on my lap, the makeup artist gently brushing powder over my cheeks. The lights were hot. My mouth was dry. But the moment the interviewer said, "Welcome, Sarah," I straightened my back and told my story all over again. This time, to the whole world. I talked about the first time he touched me, the spiritual lies, the threats, the pregnancies, the shame, the fear, the silence, the pain. And I ended with this. I went to him for prayer. I trusted him with my broken heart. But he broke it again, and again, and again. He got me pregnant 5 times. I was his victim. But now I am his survivor. The video went viral within hours. And then the unexpected happened. A woman appeared at our hideout. She wore dark glasses and a scarf that hid most of her face. Mama didn't want to let her in, but I felt something familiar about her. When she pulled off her glasses, my mouth dropped open. It was Mrs. Adebayo, the head deacon's wife, one of the most respected women in the church. I had seen her sit in the front row, nodding and shouting, "Amen," to every word Pastor Daniel preached. She sat down, her eyes red with tears. "I knew," she said softly. "I knew what he was doing. I saw too much. I heard too much. I'm so sorry." I didn't know what to say. My fists clenched. My jaw tightened. "I tried to leave the church once," she continued. "He threatened my son. Said he would destroy my husband's career. He had all our secrets. He controlled us like puppets." "So why are you here?" I asked. She looked at me with eyes full of guilt. "Because there's more. Much more. There's a hidden account. A list of women he paid off. And there's a video. A terrible one." My stomach turned. "What kind of video?" "One of the girls," she whispered. "From years ago. She was only 16. I wanted to scream. Cynthia arrived the next morning. Mrs. Adebayo handed her a small hard drive and a folder. Inside were bank statements, documents, signatures, even internal church memos. All proof that several top church leaders knew exactly what was going on and helped cover it up. That afternoon, we took it to the authorities. This wasn't just about Pastor Daniel anymore. This was a network. And now there was enough to break it wide open. The police confirmed it. They were moving to arrest at least 7 people. Church board members, financial officers, and the pastor's own personal bodyguard. But before the news broke, before they could even knock on the first door, Cynthia called me in the middle of the night. Her voice was shaking. "Sarah, are you with the children?" "Yes." "Why?" "There's been an explosion." My heart stopped. "Where?" She swallowed hard. "The old church building. The prayer house where you used to meet him. It's gone. Burned to the ground. And they found a body. I gasped. Who? They're not sure. But they think it might be Pastor Daniel. My body froze. Everything around me blurred. The lights. The fan. The sound of crickets outside. All I could hear was one thing. He might be dead. Was this over? Or was this just another part of his plan? For hours I couldn't speak. I sat on the floor, surrounded by my sleeping children, replaying Cynthia's words in my head. They think it might be Pastor Daniel. Burned. Dead. Gone. A part of me felt relief, but a larger part felt fear. This man was clever. A master manipulator. What if this was another lie? Another performance? What if he had faked his own death to escape justice? By morning, the news was everywhere. Church prayer house burned to ashes, charred body found in basement. Authorities suspect suicide or cover-up. Could Pastor Daniel be dead? I stared at the TV, holding my baby in my arms. Every time they showed the smoldering rubble, I felt a strange emptiness inside me. Mama shook her head and whispered. He tried to erase everything. Even himself. Cynthia came to visit that afternoon. She looked pale and restless. I spoke with the police, she said. They won't confirm if it's really him yet. The body was too badly burned. They'll need DNA to be sure. What if he ran? I asked. What if this was all a trick? She nodded. That's what I'm afraid of too. We know he has money. Connections. Fake passports even. That fire could have been a distraction. And that body might not even be him. I wrapped my arms around my knees. Then what now? What do we do? Cynthia looked me in the eye. We keep going. With or without him, the others are still guilty. The system that protected him is still standing. And we're not done yet. That same day, the police carried out a raid on Church of the Light Ministries headquarters. Officers seized documents, computers, hard drives, everything. Church board members were handcuffed in public. Congregation members cried. Some still refused to believe any of it was true. I watched the footage with a tight knot in my chest. This was the place I used to kneel in, pray in, cry in. The place I once believed would heal me, but had instead destroyed me. Then late in the evening, Cynthia showed me something that would change everything. Sarah, she said, opening her laptop. I got this from an anonymous tip this morning. On the screen was a video clip. Security camera footage, timestamped just hours before the church caught fire. It showed a man in a black hoodie entering through the back door. He walked with a limp. A limp I knew very well. Pastor Daniel. I covered my mouth, trembling. It wasn't suicide. It wasn't an accident. He had gone into that building, set the fire himself, and walked out the back before the flames exploded. The body in the basement? A decoy. Another victim. God have mercy, I whispered. We immediately sent the footage to the police. That night, I barely slept. I held my children close, every creak and whisper in the darkness making my heart pound. I dreamed that he was standing outside our window smiling. When I woke, sweat dripping down my face, I found a missed call on my phone, from an unknown number, and a voicemail. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. First silence, then the sound of slow breathing, and finally his voice. Calm, smooth, cold. You think you've won, Sarah. But this isn't over. You tried to fight me with the truth. Now watch what happens when I fight back, with fire. I dropped the phone. My body went stiff. The next day, the message reached me in real life. Mama had gone to the market early, leaving the children and me still in the house. Around 9 a.m., I opened the door to take out the trash, and found a box sitting on the step. There was no name, no label. I looked around. No one. I picked it up slowly and opened it. Inside was a baby doll, covered in what looked like blood. Its neck had been twisted, and pinned to its chest was a note. Next time it won't be a doll. My scream shook the house. The children came running. I slammed the door shut and called Cynthia immediately. By noon, the police had arrived. Again. They took fingerprints, photographs, statements. But none of it eased the horror living in my chest. This man wasn't finished. He had faked his death. vanished from the world. But he was still watching me, still near, still haunting every step I took. And I knew then, if we didn't stop him soon, someone else would die. It could be Cynthia. It could be me. It could be one of my children. I looked down at the box again and made a decision. I'm not running anymore, I said quietly. Cynthia looked at me with wide eyes. What are you going to do? I stared straight ahead. I'm going to set a trap. And this time he's going to fall into it. I knew that to trap a monster like Pastor Daniel I had to think like him. He was careful, calculated, always 2 steps ahead. But he had one weakness: control. He needed to control everything. The moment someone slipped out of that control, he panicked. That's why he was targeting me now. Because I had become dangerous. I sat with Cynthia and Mr. Howard, our lawyer, at her office late that night. The lights were off, curtains drawn. We spoke in whispers. I want to bait him, I said. Cynthia looked at me like I'd grown 2 heads. Sarah, he's unstable. He sent you a mutilated doll and threatened your kids. I know. And that's why it's time to end this, I said firmly. We make him believe I'm scared, that I want to give up, that I'm ready to meet him alone. Mr. Howard leaned forward, concern in his eyes. If we're going to do this, we need backup.
Surveillance.
Security. Hidden microphones. He won't fall into an open trap unless he feels safe. We need to build the perfect lie. We planned for days. I crafted a fake voicemail. I recorded myself crying and begging. Pastor, I can't take it anymore. I want to make it all go away. Please, let's talk one last time in private. We sent it to the same number that had left me the threatening message. We knew he was listening. And now we waited. 2 days passed. Then 3. I was beginning to lose hope. Until Cynthia received a text from an anonymous line. Midnight. Abandoned filling station by the railway. Come alone.
No caps.
Or your kids disappear. I shivered reading it. The trap was set. We worked with a private security team, people Cynthia trusted more than the local police. They had hidden cameras, long-range mics, body armor, drones.
Real professionals.
They disguised themselves as beggars, Okada riders, and drunk men lying by the roadside. I wore a tight blouse with a pin-sized microphone in my collar, and a tracker tucked in my bra. My heart was thumping. My palms were soaked in sweat. Midnight came. I left Mama and the kids in Cynthia's care and got into the car. The driver was a decoy, one of our security men. He parked far away while I walked the last stretch alone, my legs trembling beneath me. The filling station was silent, covered in dust and vines. The wind howled through the broken windows. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then I saw him, standing by the corner wall, dressed in black, hood over his head. But I knew it was him. That same limp, that same evil presence. I swallowed my fear and stepped forward. Pastor Daniel, I whispered. He turned and smiled. Sarah, my beautiful Sarah, you finally remembered who you belong to. I held my breath. He walked closer slowly. All this noise, this drama. You think the world cares about your story? They'll forget you in a week. But me? I built a kingdom. And you tried to burn it down. He stepped so close I could smell his breath. I almost gagged. Do you want to end this? He asked. Come back to me. Bring your children. Be my queen, Sarah. That was the plan. 5 sons. 1 destiny. I was building a legacy with you. My stomach turned. You used me, I said. He chuckled. You were weak. I gave you power. You cried in my arms. You begged me to touch you. My fists clenched. My mouth trembled. I was grieving. I came to you for healing. He grabbed my wrist. That's when I said the signal word into the mic. One single word we had planned. Mercy. Within seconds, the darkness exploded into flashing lights. Loud footsteps thundered around us. Dozens of men rushed from the shadows. Red dots appeared on Pastor Daniel's chest from every angle. He froze. Get down, a voice shouted. He tried to run. But before he could even take 3 steps, he was tackled to the ground. I stepped back, watching him wrestle and scream like a mad dog. He cursed. He spat. He called down fire and brimstone. But none of it worked now. His power was gone. They cuffed him and dragged him into a van. I stood still, frozen as the dust settled. Cynthia came running to me, hugging me tight. "You did it," she whispered. "It's over." But I shook my head.
No.
Not yet. Because while Pastor Daniel was finally in custody, and we had every recording, every piece of evidence, every victim statement, there was one more twist coming. The next morning I returned home. I found a letter slipped under the door again. This one had no threats.
No curses.
Just one line written in a woman's handwriting. "He is not the only one." And underneath that, a list of names. Pastors, prophets, evangelists, big names, popular ones, men on TV every Sunday. I read the list in shock. This was bigger than Daniel. He wasn't the root. He was just a branch. The letter shook me to my core. I read it over and over again, barely breathing. My fingers trembled as I traced each name. Some of them I recognized from billboards and television. Some had millions of followers. One had even prayed for the president on live TV. He is not the only one. That single sentence echoed in my head like a drumbeat. I didn't know who sent it. There was no signature, no address. But deep in my gut, I knew it came from someone who had been through the same pain. Another victim. Or maybe someone still trapped in their nightmare. I rushed to Cynthia's house, where Mama and the kids were still sleeping. She opened the door in her robe, her eyes barely adjusted to the light. "I got another letter," I whispered. Cynthia took one look at my face and pulled me inside. As she read it, her expression changed from confusion to horror. "Sarah, this is a hit list." "No," I said, shaking my head. "It's a warning." Mr. Howard came over that afternoon. We sat around the dining table, the children watching cartoons in the next room. Mama kept pacing the hallway with her rosary, whispering prayers. "We need to verify these names," Howard said. "We can't just accuse anyone without proof." "I agree," Cynthia added. "If we speak up now, they'll say we're trying to destroy the church, that we're bitter women with a personal agenda." "But what if there are other women like me?" I asked. "What if they're still suffering in silence because no one has ever dared to open the door?" The next few weeks became a storm. Pastor Daniel's arrest spread like wildfire online. Videos, headlines, reactions. Some people were furious and denied everything. Others were stunned into silence. A few brave women started to speak up, some anonymously, some with faces uncovered. Each story had a haunting similarity. They went to him for prayers and ended up used, broken, and left behind. One girl, just 17, said he convinced her she was possessed and needed spiritual cleansing that could only come through holy contact. Another woman said he forced her to drink his urine during a deliverance session. It was vile, demonic. The public was divided. Some called me a hero. Others called me a Jezebel. There were protests outside the church. The building was sealed by the government. But behind all the noise, Cynthia and I kept digging. One name on the letter stood out to us, Pastor Leonard Markson. He was the most beloved man of God on morning television. His voice was soft, his smile charming. He led national fasts and was known for touch-free healing. But something felt off. I began to visit his church, pretending to be a new member. I wore a scarf, changed my name to Rachel, and sat at the back. The moment I walked in, my body reacted. That same tightness in my chest. That same unease in my spirit. He didn't even look at me that day, but I felt seen. Watched. It was like I had entered the lion's den wearing goat meat perfume. A week later, I received a call from an unknown number. "Rachel?" the voice asked softly. "Yes," I replied, swallowing hard. "This is Pastor Leonard's personal assistant. The man of God saw you in church last week and received a vision about your life. He'd like to pray with you, privately, tomorrow morning. Are you available?" I froze. Cynthia was beside me recording the call. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm available." We set the same trap as before, only this time it was more dangerous. Leonard had government protection, political ties, and media power. If he went down, he wasn't going alone. The next morning I arrived at his mansion, yes, mansion on the island. Security men were everywhere. But they let me in easily, smiling politely. Inside, the air smelled like fresh flowers and hidden secrets. Pastor Leonard walked in wearing a white caftan, barefoot, holding a Bible. "Rachel," he said, smiling, "God has been speaking to me about you." I nodded slowly. "You carry great destiny," he said, placing his hand over mine. "But there is a dark force around your womb. A generational curse. If we don't break it now, your children will suffer. Your daughters will be barren." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "I want to be free, Pastor," I said in my weakest, most desperate voice. He smiled wider. "Then surrender. Let the Holy Spirit move through me. Into you." I stared at him. He was bold. Calm. He didn't even try to hide his intention. This wasn't deliverance. This was defilement dressed as devotion. I waited for his hand to touch my thigh. As it moved down slowly, I whispered the signal word again. "Mercy." But this time something went wrong. There was silence. No one burst through the door.
No footsteps. No noise.
I said it again louder. "Mercy." Still nothing. That's when I knew. We had been betrayed. Pastor Leonard paused, raising his eyebrow. "Is something wrong, my dear?" I jumped to my feet and tried to run. But the door locked behind me with a loud click. I was trapped. Alone. In the house of a wolf dressed in wool. The door clicked shut behind me, and I knew I was in danger. "Where are you going, Rachel?" Pastor Leonard said. His voice smooth and sweet like poisoned honey. "We haven't even begun the cleansing." I backed away, heart thumping like thunder in my chest. He walked toward me slowly, calmly, like a lion circling its prey. "Don't be afraid," he said. "You came here for healing, didn't you? Open the door." I shouted, panic cracking my voice. I said open the door. But he only smiled wider. "You women come here pretending to be broken, but you forget, God shows me everything. I knew who you were the moment I saw you. Sarah." I froze. He knew my real name. "Do you think I don't know what you did to Daniel?" he continued. "You humiliated a man of God. You destroyed his calling. I exposed a devil in disguise." I snapped, finally finding my voice. Pastor Leonard's eyes darkened. "We are covered by grace. You? You're just a bitter woman with a wounded heart and a loud mouth." I reached for my purse, where Cynthia had hidden a small pepper spray can. But before I could grab it, Leonard lunged forward and snatched the bag from my hand, flinging it across the room. "You planned this too?" he hissed. He grabbed my arm, squeezing so tightly I winced. "I should finish you myself," he whispered, dragging me toward the couch. "Let me go." I screamed, kicking and thrashing, but he was stronger. And then bang. The door burst open. "Howard." "Cynthia." Two officers with guns. "Get your hands off her," one officer shouted, storming in. Leonard froze. His hands released me instantly. Cynthia rushed to my side and pulled me into her arms. "We got delayed at the gate," she whispered. "His guards tried to stop us." Howard held up the warrant. "You're under arrest for attempted sexual assault, Pastor Leonard Markson." Leonard stood tall and proud. He didn't resist. Didn't even flinch. He raised both hands and smiled at the cameras behind the police. "Yes, film it," he said calmly. "Let the world see how they treat men of God in this country." He turned to me, his eyes blazing with pride, not shame. "You think this ends with me?" he said. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. This fire you've started, it will burn you too." As they handcuffed him, I stood up and faced him. My hands shook, but my voice was strong. "This fire isn't mine," I said. "It belongs to every woman you've hurt. And we're not afraid of the flames anymore." Cameras flashed. Reporters yelled questions. The news broke within minutes. Another pastor caught in attempted rape scandal. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because of what we found inside his home. Dozens of files. Hidden phones. USB drives labeled with women's names. Some I knew, some I didn't. Each one was a key to a story, a secret, a soul. One file stopped my breath. Sarah, full report. Inside were surveillance photos of me. Me dropping my kids off at school. Me walking to the market. Even me crying on Cynthia's couch. He'd been watching me for weeks. There were names listed under mine too: Mama, Cynthia, Howard, even my son's school teacher. He knew everything. He was building a case against you, Cynthia whispered, reading over my shoulder. Or maybe planning something worse. But the scariest part? The file ended with this sentence. Deliver her to the circle before she exposes the rest. The circle? Howard dug deeper. We discovered something horrifying. There wasn't just a group of corrupt pastors working separately. They were connected. A hidden brotherhood. Men who shared power, money, and women. Young girls. Some kidnapped. Some trafficked from villages in the name of church scholarships. And worse, some never came back. The documents hinted at secret locations, offshore accounts, and spiritual retreats where no phones were allowed. We've stumbled into something massive, Howard said. This isn't about one or two bad men. This is a full-blown religious cartel. And I, Sarah Thomas, had just declared war on them. I held my children close that night, not telling them everything. But in my heart, I knew the fight wasn't over. Pastor Leonard was behind bars. But for how long? Pastor Daniel's followers had already started calling me a witch. My face was on blogs and memes on angry live streams. They said I was possessed. That I was the devil's tool. But I also saw something else. Young women messaging me. Anonymous texts. Emails. He did it to me too. I thought I was the only one. Please help me escape. And just when I thought it couldn't get darker, I received a new envelope at Cynthia's gate. No return address. Inside was a photograph. A girl barely 15 tied to a bed. With the words, "She's next unless you back off." The moment I saw the photo, I dropped it like it was fire. Cynthia picked it up slowly, her hands trembling. "Who would send this?" she whispered, eyes wide. I already knew. The circle. They wanted to scare me into silence. But fear had burned out of me long ago. What remained was rage, a mother's rage, a woman's rage, a survivor's rage. "We're not backing off," I said, my voice cold and firm. That same day, Howard called in a private security team. The police had already received the evidence we submitted about the trafficking, and a federal task force had begun investigating. Quietly, because these pastors had friends in high places. That girl in the photo had no name, no location. Just a picture, a threat, and a countdown written on the back. "You have 5 days." We had to act fast. Howard traced the envelope's origin to a printing shop in another state. The clerk remembered the man, tall, dark shades, speaking softly. But no ID. Still, it was a lead. Meanwhile, Pastor Leonard was granted bail. Of course he was. His lawyer claimed the arrest was politically motivated. The church launched a massive online campaign, painting him as a victim of a feminist attack. His followers held night vigils outside the police station, praying for his release. When I saw him on TV again, clean-shaven, smiling, walking out of jail surrounded by cameras, I felt sick. "They released him?" Cynthia shouted. "After everything?" "It's not over," I said, clenching my fists. "He may be free for now, but we've started something he can't stop." Still, the danger grew closer. One night, Mama's window was smashed with a brick. On it, a note was tied. "Leave it alone. Final warning." I had to send my kids to stay with their father's sister in another town. I didn't want to, but I couldn't risk their safety. My daughter cried as I kissed her goodbye. "Mummy, when will you come for us?" "Soon, baby," I said, hiding my tears. "Mummy's fighting some bad people. But I promise, I'll come for you." Time was running out. On the 3rd day we got a breakthrough. One of Leonard's former housekeepers, a girl named Blessing, reached out anonymously. She told Howard she'd seen girls brought into a retreat center, in a compound owned by the church, located deep in the countryside, disguised as an orphanage. I overheard them saying one of the girls wasn't pure, and they needed to find a replacement, she wrote. "They have cages underground." I was too scared to speak out. I didn't wait for permission. I begged Howard and his team to go with me. We drove down that same night. The compound was large, gated, and surrounded by farmland. But through binoculars, we saw movement. Men with flashlights patrolling. Dogs. A few girls sitting on benches with shaved heads and blank eyes. "This is it," Cynthia whispered beside me. "We found them." The team used drones to scan the area. We spotted a stairway hidden behind a shed that led underground. That's where they were keeping them. The police were already on their way, but I couldn't wait. Not after seeing another girl being dragged by her arm into the shed. I'm going in, I said. Howard grabbed my wrist. Sarah, you can't. I have to, I said. If we wait, they might move them. Or worse. He didn't argue again. We put on dark clothes. Cynthia stayed in the car with the radio, ready to call backup if anything went wrong. Howard and I crept into the bushes, using the darkness as cover. One of his team members created a distraction at the front gate, setting off a firecracker that drew the guards away. We slipped through the side and down into the underground cellar. The smell hit us first, mildew, sweat, and something metallic. The air was cold. The walls were lined with cages, actual cages. And inside them, girls. Some were as young as 10, others teenagers. Their eyes widened when they saw us, but they didn't scream. They didn't move, like they'd been trained not to react. Then we saw her, the girl from the photo. She was tied to a mattress, arms bruised, mouth gagged. I rushed to her, my heart pounding. It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here to help you. Her eyes filled with tears. We started unlocking the cages. Howard radioed Cynthia. Tell them to move in. Now. Then we heard footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Leonard's voice echoed through the hallway. Who let you in here? He was coming. Take her, I told Howard, handing him the girl. Get them out. I'm not leaving you, he snapped. Howard, go. I grabbed a metal rod and turned to face the doorway. Leonard appeared with 2 men, one holding a taser. There she is, Leonard sneered. The rebel prophetess. You're done, Leonard, I said, standing firm. We found your temple of torment. The world will see who you really are. He raised his hand to strike me, but I swung the rod hard. Clang! It hit his side. He screamed. The other man lunged at me. But before he could touch me, Howard returned and tackled him to the floor. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police cars. Dogs barking. Flashlights flooding the hallway. They rushed in, guns raised, arresting everyone. And Pastor Leonard? He was handcuffed again. But this time there were no cameras to save him. Only victims. Only truth. Only justice. That night we freed 17 girls. Some had been missing for years. Their families thought they were dead. Instead, they had been hidden beneath the House of Light ministry, abused and brainwashed. And me? I stood in the rain that night, soaked and exhausted, but smiling. For the first time in a long time I felt free. I fought back. And I won. But the war isn't over. Because the circle still exists. And now they know my name.
Thank you for listening to this story, my dear ones. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Grandma's Tales. Like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're listening from. I love hearing from each and every one of you. Until we meet again in another story, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, you are never alone.